Hello, hello, hello. Good day, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening to this program. Thank you for joining us. I'm your Bible Big Brother Christian. We have been going through the ESV Study Bible in a year. This is day 14, and I'm so glad you're here with me. So glad you're here with us, going through our journey. Um, Today, we will be going through Genesis chapter 37 to 39. We'll look at the ESV Study Bible notes, and then we'll look at the verses in the history of salvation. We're getting to the end of the book of Genesis, but first, let's see where we have been. On day one, we started in Genesis chapter 1, and we saw the creation week, where in 6 days, the God of the universe created everything from nothing. And then we saw a magnified view of what happened on day 6 in chapter 2, where he created mankind, man and woman, in his image, and he placed them in the Garden of Eden. While they were there, though, there was a fall from grace. There was disobedience, which caused them to get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. But before they were kicked out, and as God was cursing the serpent that enticed them, the woman and the man, in the midst of his cursing, he provided hope, saying that there would be an offspring who would crush the head of the serpent, but the serpent would bite his heel. And we have been searching for the offspring that would do this and reverse the curse. We thought we saw it in Cain or Abel or maybe Seth. They were not it. Maybe it would have been in Noah. He was not it. Maybe in Abraham. Close, but not it. But through Abraham, we started to see that God made some promises to him about nations coming from him and then people who would come and have a place, a land, right, in the land of Canaan. And his descendants would be, would number the stars and in the sand of the sea, and the dust of the earth. Be great descendants, great number of descendants, and even kings would come. And as God's making those promises, we see Abraham have two children, but one child of promise, being Isaac. We thought that he might be the promised offspring from before in Genesis chapter 3, but he was not. Yet God reiterated his promises to him and then to his son, Joseph. And we've been going through a roller coaster ride with Joseph, some ups and downs in his faith. And with that, though, we saw that Joseph ended up having a bevy of children between 4 women, right? His first wife, who he was tricked in marrying, Leah, he had 6 children from her. 6, I think 7. I think Dinah's from her. 7 children from her. From his slave, from his slaves, 2 children each from them, and then from his wife that he actually loves, Rachel. We see that he has 2 children from there. His wife Rachel dies as she's given birth to his last son, Benjamin. But there are times in the story where a couple of his children are highlighted. And so one we saw highlighted was Dinah. Dinah being the only girl and the only woman in the book of Genesis that we see a birth story. And so we find out that there's something highlighted about Dinah, that maybe something special about her, and that we were to be on the lookout for something major that would come up. And we saw that in our last episode, as there was a rape or sexual assault, or maybe just some sexual immorality. Something happened between Dinah and Shechem. And because of those events, there was a major event of a mass murder committed by her brothers on the inhabitants of the city of Shechem because of the actions of the man Shechem. And because of this caused Jacob and his family to leave the area. But prior to this, there was one child that stood out as we saw Jacob going back from Padan Aram to Canaan. And on the way, he was getting ready to see his brother Esau. And as he was getting ready to see Esau, he set his family up in order. And he put the slave women and their children first. And then he put Leah and her children behind them. And then last, he put Rachel. And instead of saying he put Rachel and her child, he said he put Rachel and Joseph. So Joseph was named outside of the other children. And so that made our ears perk up. Hey, what is special about this young man, Joseph? Is there anything that we should be on the lookout for? And with that background knowledge, we enter today into Genesis chapter 37 to 39. And maybe today we will find out why Joseph was highlighted. Genesis chapter 37 to 39. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brother said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept the saying in mind. Now, his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty; there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. He took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she called his name Shelah. Judah was in Chezib when she bore him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So whenever he went in to his brother's wife, he would waste the semen on the ground, so as not to give offspring to his brother. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house till Shelah, my son, grows up," for he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah Shua's daughter, died. When Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And when Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep, she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, and she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, come, let me come into you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, what will you give me that you may come into me? He answered, I will send you a goat from the flock. And she said, if you give me a pledge until you send it. He said, what pledge shall I give you? She replied, your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. She gave them to her. So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, where is the colt prostitute who was at Enaim at the roadside? And they said, no colt prostitute has been here. So he returned to Judah and said, I have not found her. Also, the men of the place said, no colt prostitute has been here. And Judah replied, let her keep the things as her own, or we shall be laughed at. You see, I sent this young goat, and you did not find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality. And Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned. As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, by the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant. And she said, please identify whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff. Then Judah identified them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not know her again. When the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, this one came out first. But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, what a breach you have made for yourself. Therefore, his name was called Perez. Afterward, his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had brought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him. And he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all he had in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge. Because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, Because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house. And he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house were there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said, see, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you brought among us came into me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house. As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, this is the way your servant treated me, his anger was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. This is the word of the Lord. All right. Time for the notes. Chapter 37, verse 1. This verse provides a transition from Esau's family to Jacob's, whereas Esau's descendants dwell in Seir alongside the Horites. Jacob settles in Canaan like his father Isaac. Let me go back to, just kind of want to go back to here. Yeah. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. Okay. Yeah. This is I think very interesting. Probably if I haven't been doing this exercise and trying to pay attention to the land and where things are, I probably wouldn't pay attention to this point in the story. However, seeing where the brothers settled, right? And that a story is being told also too by where they go, where they choose wives, and then where they settle, right? Though Jacob goes back to Padan Aram, to Mesopotamia to choose a wife, right? He comes back to the land promised. Though Esau marries within the land that was promised, right? He goes and dwells outside the land that was promised. Okay. Says something about the two. Chapter 37, verse 2 to chapter 50, verse 26. Jacob's descendants. The last main section of Genesis further develops a theme of a regal line descended from Abraham. While royalty is initially ascribed to Joseph and is later linked to his younger son Ephraim, future kingship is also associated with the line of Judah. As immediate heir to the patriarchal promises, Joseph, the governor of Egypt, mediates divine blessing to many people. Genesis, however, anticipates a time when the leadership of Israel will pass from the tribe of Ephraim to the tribe of Judah. See Psalm chapter 78, verses 67 to 68. This story serves the first readers by explaining how they came to be in Egypt, namely through God's mysterious use of evil and noble deeds to bring about his purpose. Cross-reference Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. All right. So we have, the note here sets us up for what we're going to see coming up later. And I mean, this is probably the quintessential teaching or story within the Bible with regard to God's sovereignty and providence, right? Where we repeatedly see wicked actions by individuals are used by God and lead to their own salvation, not because of their goodness or their righteousness, but in spite of it, where God uses what they meant for evil for his good, because he has something that he is doing. Okay. And this continues to show God's faithfulness and his mercy and his patience with his people. And so, yeah, they're there. All right. Chapter 37, verses 2 to 36. Joseph is sold into slavery. Joseph is the second youngest son of Jacob, but his father bestows on him privileges normally given to the firstborn. Joseph's royal dreams further antagonize his older brothers, who cannot accept that he will reign over them. When the opportunity presents itself, they sell Joseph into slavery in Egypt. Chapter 37, verse 2. These are the generations of. All right, see note on chapter 2, verse 4. And we talked about how this phrase is used to move the story forward throughout the book of Genesis, right? Almost creating like kind of its own internal chapter breaks, right? So so now we are moving into a kind of a new era, right? So we had the era of, so we kind of just left the era of Abraham, and now we're getting and his descendants. And now we're getting into the era of Jacob and his descendants, and mainly Joseph. Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Joseph's action not only alienates him from his brothers, but implies that his behavior is more righteous than theirs. Something largely borne out by future events. Yeah, this is the first time I actually paid attention to that verse, where he's out there with his brothers, and then basically comes back and tattletales, right? So Joseph is Mr. Goody Goody Two Shoes around here, and the brothers aren't liking it. Not only is he Mr. Goody Goody Two Shoes, right? Teacher's pet, always doing the right thing, right? Not only always doing the right thing, but doing the right thing and telling on others. But he gets more love from his dad, right? And brothers can't stand him. So I don't know, quite funny to me. All right, chapter 37, verse 3. As previously indicated, Joseph is Jacob's favorite. See note on chapter 33, verses 1 to 3. The son of his old age. Since Benjamin is actually the last son born to Jacob, the unusual Hebrew expression son of old age, there is no explicit word for his in the Hebrew text, may denote someone who displays exceptional maturity while still young, or perhaps the son closest to Jacob in his old age. Jacob may have recognized Joseph's leadership potential early in life. Robe of many colors. The Hebrew expression used to denote this cloak is used elsewhere only of a garment worn by King David's daughter, Tamar. Okay, and we read the story of Tamar yesterday. And if you're just reading this note, we'll go back and look at it. But we read it yesterday and compared it to Dinah's story, right? And we looked at and we kind of use that story to try to help us to orient our understanding of their understanding of sexual ethics within their culture compared to ours, right? And what was worse, you know, um, sexual assaults, you know, or a non-virgin unmarried woman, right? And so we were looking at that. So that's why we looked at the Tamar story. But we'll look at it after we read this note. The actual design of the cloak is uncertain. As the ESV footnote explains, the translation here is based on the understanding of the Septuagint translators. Greek poikilos, many colored. The alternative is a robe with long sleeves. Cross-reference the text in ESV footnote in 2 Samuel 13, or chapter 13, verse 18, which uses the same Hebrew expression. All right. Let's go visit Tamar again. 2 Samuel 13. Okay, now she was wearing a long robe with sleeves. For thus were the virgin daughters of a king dressed. So this is the same Hebrew word. Man, this brings up a lot of questions. I'm not gonna lie. This brings up so many questions in my mind. Okay. Man, I'm gonna have to go do some digging and with some biblical scholars. This brings up a lot of questions. Okay, this is the same Hebrew word, right? And here, the only reason it's translated, as the ESV study note says, that the Hebrew expression used to denote this cloak is used elsewhere only of the garment worn by King David's daughter Tamar, right? So the same Hebrew word is in both of those stories, right? But the reason why it is translated many colored is because it's based on the understanding of the Septuagint translators. So the Septuagint translators translated it many colored, which I'm guessing they didn't translate that for Tamar. Very interesting. All right. Oh man, my thoughts. And I'm thinking out loud. And I'll have to go and do some digging, look at some biblical scholarship on this. So I've never heard this. This is my first time. But if man, how do I even explain what's going on in my head right now? Let's not even, because I think I'm going to cause more confusion. I'm going to cause more confusion. Okay. I'm trying to understand the story as originally presented. Right. And so if there is a connection in the Hebrew from this story to the Tamar story, right? But then there is a connection. If there's a connection from this story to the Tamar story, then there's a connection from this story to the Dinah story, right? And so, is there something that Joseph is doing with Jacob as his favorite? Um, I don't know. Yeah, I, I have to do some digging. I don't want to cause confusion, so I have to do some digging. What the thing that I'm thinking though, it does not change. It does not change the meaning of the story at all, or that. It's just it's one of my weird things. Like, oh man, are they doing this? Are they doing that? Da da da. You know, trying to connect the dots, this, that, and this. Making the story more alive in my head, but it might cause confusion for other people. So I'm gonna keep it to myself for right now. Just know that because of this ESV Study Bible note, I'm going to be doing some digging amongst biblical scholars to see if someone has discussed what I'm thinking in my head. All right, let's move on to the next note. Chapter 37, verses 4-5. Jealousy leads to division and deep animosity within Jacob's family. Verse 4. Joseph had a dream. Verse 5. Although it is not specified here in Genesis, dreams are normally associated with divine revelation. Right? Exactly. And, so saying, see, chapter 20, verse 3. If we go on chapter 20, I believe that's still God appearing to Abraham. Chapter 20, chapter 28, it'll be God appearing to Isaac. And then chapter 31, verses 10 to 11, will be God appearing to Jacob in a dream, right? Then that's chapter 40, verses 5 to 8, chapter 41, verse 1. We haven't been there yet. But yeah, there does become the assumption, because of the way that we've seen dreams play out before. Oh, you know what? I think chapter 20 is Abimelech. Let's look at this real quick. Genesis. Yeah, God went to Abimelech. All right. 28. 12. Oh no, that was to Jacob. 28 verse 12 was to Jacob. He was on the road at Bethel in Luz, which he ended up calling Bethel. And 31. Let me say 31. Man, it's 30. It's 31. Laban. No, it's Jacob. Okay. All right. Cool. Goodness. All right. All right, here we go. We have a little chart here for those of you who are listening. They were looking at it on the page. It's Joseph's timeline, right? So we have it's a 3-column chart. So we have in one column certain events in Joseph's life. The second column, the age of Joseph, when it might have been, and then the last column is where and within the book of Genesis it was, right? So Joseph's father Jacob moves family from Haran to Canaan, chapter 6. That's Joseph was probably 6 years old at that time. That's in Genesis chapter 31, verse 17 to 21. Joseph is sold to Potiphar at age 17. Right? That's in chapter 37. Then later we'll see him interpret dreams of a cupbearer and baker in prison. He'll be 28 then. His grandfather Isaac dies when he's 29. Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams at age 30. 7 years of plenty, and then sons Manasseh and Ephraim born during this time, chapters 37, or age 30 to 37. 7 years of famine. 2 years into the famine, Joseph reconciles with his brothers and father, chapters 37 to 44. Sorry, goodness gracious. He's aged 37 to 44. That's chapter 41 to 47. Joseph's father, Jacob, dies at age 56, and then Joseph dies at age 110. All right. So if he's sold into slavery at age 17, and it's another 20 years before there's reconciliation, 20 plus years for reconciliation with his brothers. So he would have been alive longer as someone outside of the house, either under slavery or in Pharaoh's court. By the time he sees his brothers again. All right, on to the next one. I'm gonna blow this up. Right there. All right. Chapter 37, verse 8. Joseph's brothers intuitively interpret Joseph's first dream as indicating that he will reign over them, later fulfilled in his rule over Egypt. The dream adds to the brothers' jealous hatred of Joseph, for his father has already dressed him in special attire. One thing I wanted to see, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us? Let's see. Reign. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the only other time this phrase is used. So first we get the sun and the moon are ruling over the day and over the night. And then in the curse for the woman, your desire will be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Parallel to Cain, sins is crossing the door. Its desire is for you. You must rule over it. All right. There's a certain hierarchical dynamic that God wants to happen. And so, in seeing this, are you indeed to rule over us? And then even this indeed, indeed, sorry, indeed. Oh man. What's the language of the serpent in Genesis 3? Because that's what I thought about. Genesis 3. Oh, okay. So they use actually. Did God actually say? Let me see if I can look at the ESV, the LSB real quick. LSB, Genesis 3 and Genesis 37. Let's do 26. Let's do verse 8. Okay. So LSB has here, indeed, has God said. And then here, are you really? Okay. Well, I guess whatever the Hebrew is, it's not the same. So, but I don't know. Reading that, it brought me back here. It brought me back here. So, yeah. So, but wherever we've seen this, when it comes to humans, the rule over phrase, we've seen a distortion of what God intended, and then bad outcomes happen. All right. Chapter 37, verses 9 to 11. The second dream reinforces the exception that Joseph will exercise, the expectation that Joseph will exercise authority over the rest of his family. Shall I and your mother, verse 10. When Joseph had this dream, his mother Rachel was probably dead. See chapter 35, verses 16 to 19. Your mother refers to Leah. Okay. While Joseph's brothers later bowed down to him, chapter 42, verse 6, chapter 43, verse 26, chapter 44, verse 14. There's no specific mention of his parents doing this, although possibly his father did so in chapter 47, verses 28 to 31. See note. Okay. So I wonder if other scholars would think that maybe he's telling this at a different time before Rachel's death. Because we've already seen that sometimes Genesis is not 100% chronological, right? So there's some jumping back and forth. So wonder that. All right, here we go. Next note. Chapter 37, verses 12 to 14. Joseph's brothers have taken the family flocks northward from Hebron to find better pasture. Shechem. And we talked about Shechem last few days. But yeah, it was a nice little happening spot. Right. It says see map to the right. So those who are listening, there's a map here. So the map is called Joseph and His Brothers, circa 1900, 1730 BC. Jacob sent Joseph from Hebron to Shechem to find his brothers who had been pasturing their flocks, their father's flock. When Joseph arrived, he learned that his brothers had gone to Dothan. So he went there and found them. His brothers threw him into a pit and later sold him to some Ishmaelite spice traders on their way from Gilead to Egypt. The traders took Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. All right, so their journey. Yeah, so they lived in Mamre, and they went to go all the way up to Shechem to do things with the flock there. And then Then they went to Dothan. All right, so Shechem is much further north of Mamre where they were. And then Dothan is just to the northeast, not too far. I'm not sure of the scale of this. Looks like maybe 10 miles away. So, man, that's a lot. I mean, goodness gracious, 10 miles? Yes. Yeah, about 10 miles away. Man, it's like a day's journey. Maybe these boys are flying, man. I don't know. Yeah, if they're walking, then that'd be a day's journey. Maybe not though. Maybe not. But I know from Mamre to Shechem, that's like that looked like, according to the map, maybe 40 miles, 40, 45, 50 miles from Mamre to Shechem. It's a little trek right there. All right. Back to the notes. Chapter 37, verses 15 to 17. Since his brothers have moved farther north, Joseph travels from Shechem to Dothan, a journey of about 16 to 20 miles, in order to find them. Chapter 37, verse 18 and 20. They conspired against him to kill him. Fratricide is one of the most depraved aspects of fallen humanity. See chapter 4, verse 8, chapter 27, verse 41. So chapter 4 is Cain. Chapter 27, Esau towards Jacob. Right? This dreamer, the brother's comment, is full of sarcasm. The Hebrew expression implies master owner of the dreams. Master owner of the dreams. That's pretty good right there, man. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Okay. A couple things I wanted to see. All right. So we have seen this before, this little phraseology. Come now, let us. We have yet to see any human use this phrase and it be something good. Come now, let us. Anytime humans use this, bad always comes from it, right? And they use it twice. My antenna started to go up when Jacob uses it, come, but it says, come, I will send. Okay. And this is interesting. This is also too interesting that here I am. Man, I feel like the story is written in a way that it wants us to go back to Genesis chapter 3. Here I am. Okay, okay, so we're associated with Abraham. Abraham says, here I am. And Isaac, Abraham, his father said, my father, and he said, here I am, my son. Okay, here I am. Okay. And then when Jacob says, here I am, to Isaac, wait, son said, my son, he said, okay, Esau, here I am. Father said, here I am. Who are you, son? Okay. All right. I said, here I am. Okay. And then where is 37. Let me see that something real quick. Genesis 3. All right, the herd, says, okay, because God says to Adam, where are you? I thought he said, here I am. But he said, I heard the sound of you walking in the garden. Right. So he does not say, here I am. All right. Okay. So I don't know. Maybe there's just something in my mind. I want to go back to Genesis 3. But outside of that, we do have the come, let us. Come, let us adore him. All right, Tower of Babel. Come, let us make bricks. Come, let us build for ourselves a city. Let us make a name for ourselves. Come. Now, this is the come, let us by humans. When God says it, come, let us go down and confuse our language. All right, cool. God can say it. God's language. He can do what he wants with it. But then we get Lot's daughters. Come, let us make our father a drink. Let us lie with him. A little sketchy. A little sketchy. All right. And then we got Laban a couple days ago. Come, let us cut a covenant. You and I. Let it be a witness between me and you. All right. See that in context real quick. All right. Um, nothing catastrophic happens here. I don't think because Jacob is already gone. So this would be the one time where nothing catastrophic actually happens. But we just don't like Laban. We don't like him. We don't like him. But our antennas are up. Come and let us kill him. Oh, snap. Then let us see what becomes of his dreams. Come and let us sell him. Goodness. Yeah. These guys, man. These guys. A little rough. A little rough. Come let us. Gotta start looking out for it. Hey, what's happening? What's happening here? Chapter 37, verse 21 to 22. Very interesting. Very interesting, this little part here. Reuben, the eldest of the brothers, argues against killing Joseph so that he might restore him to his father. This is very interesting, right? And I've read the story before, right? I did not remember. I couldn't remember which brother kind of, brought them back down. It's like, hey, well, let's not go through with the whole plot here. But Reuben does it, right? And the last time we discussed Reuben was pissing his father off, sleeping with his concubine. Reuben possibly hopes to regain his father's favor so that he will be confirmed as the firstborn. See, note in chapter 35, verse 22 to 23. Remember, Reuben went in, saw his father's nakedness. His father wasn't happy about it. Or perhaps Reuben has no other motive than to show mercy to Joseph. Unknown to Reuben, his plan is undermined by his brothers. When his brothers sell Joseph to passing traders. When he later returns to get Joseph, he is not there. All right. Chapter 37, verse 25. They sat down to eat. This underlines the callousness of the brothers who have just thrown their brother into a pit. Right? I mean, goodness. No regard at all. They were just plotting to kill this man. And then they go, have a nice little bite to eat, right? Just, my goodness. Oh, I watch cop shows and stuff a lot. I always tell my wife, man, maybe in another life, I would have been a police officer. Right? I don't know. It's probably not like that in real life, what I see on the TV, but I like them. But every once in a while, though, they there's comments where they are able to tell how vicious a person is by their comfortability with their crime, right? Someone goes and kills somebody. Next thing you know, they're having a 5-star meal. Like, man, this person's either done this before or they're just psycho. Because most people, it's unnatural for us to do, harm like that to other people. And so whenever that happens, most people, have some sort of a conscience, are unsettled. Like, oh man, trying to figure out, go back and forth. Did I do the right thing? They're trying to reason within themselves, right? They're having a moral battle. But these jokers, la da da da, hey man, who brought the bread? Who brought the lamb? Pass over the wine, the cheese curds. Goodness. Caravan of Ishmaelites. These traders, who originate from the Sinai Peninsula, are traveling south in the direction of Egypt. Although they are initially identified as Ishmaelites, a broad category covering various people groups. In verses 28 and 36, they are designated more specifically as Midianites, coming from Gilead. See note on chapter 31, verse 21. Let's take a look at it real quick. I'll look at it off screen. Okay, chapter 31, verse 21. The note there says, hill country of Gilead. The region lies to the east of the Jordan River, several hundred miles south of Padan Aram. Okay, and then over on the map that we were looking at, Joseph's brothers, there's a little, it shows Gilead there, right to the east of the Jordan River, right north of Succoth. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting that they call them Ishmaelites, right? So we know that all these brothers are descendants of Isaac, and Ishmaelites obviously are descendants of Ishmael, both coming from Abraham, one being the son of natural birth, the other the son of supernatural birth, the son of promise. Camels. See note on 12:16. This that note talked about the prevalence or the lack thereof of camels at this time. Apparently, this was a known activity in the region. For example, one Ugaritic text from the 14th century BC tells of a man in Syria being sold by his comrade to a passing caravan of Egyptians who stripped him of his goods and abandoned him. Yeah, so hey, apparently this was, don't make somebody mad because they'll sell you. Yeah, so apparently this was common practice at that time. Chapter 37, verse is 26 to 27. Judah said to his brothers, let's see, let's come down a little bit. Sorry about that. Judah said to his brothers, although Judah exhibits compassion by not wanting to kill Joseph, and he may have been seeking any possible solution he could not find to save Joseph's life, his proposal may have been motivated by greed as he sees an opportunity to make a profit from the sale of his brother. All right, let's take a look at it up here, verse 26 to 27. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." Goodness gracious. Oh, man. The sliminess, the slimy goodness. Judah. All right. Yeah. So he's like, "Hey, look, y'all. We have a chance here. Okay. We have a chance to come up. Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. Because we kill him, I mean, what's gonna come of that? Dad gonna be sad. You know, we don't get none of that. He gonna be gone. So we can have him gone and make money from it. We'll have all the same conditions that we'll have if we kill him, but we'll get paid and it won't be our hands on it. Our hands will be clean. Brilliant, Judah. Brilliant. Golf clap. Goodness gracious. It's a precursor to the next episode. Chapter 37, verse 28. 20 shekels of silver. Mesopotamian documents from the early second millennium BC reveal the price of slaves ranged from 15 to 30 shekels. 20 shekels is the value in the Hammurabi Code. At any given time in the history of Egypt, there was a significant substratum of slaves. Many of these were captives of war, but there was also a large slave trade. So many of the slaves came from Asia, that's in quotes, Canaan, Mesopotamia, Hatti, Syria. The word Asiatic became synonymous with slave. Wow. Serious? Chapter 37, verse 29 to 30. Tore his clothes, a visible sign of intense anguish and pain, often linking to mourning. Where shall I go? Reuben's grief and despair might center not on the loss of Joseph himself, but on his own lost opportunity to regain his father's favor. Exactly. Right. Reuben's like, "Man, I done messed up. I need a chance to show my dad, hey, man, I'm still good." And it's like, dang it. Lost my chance. What happened? Lost my chance. Chapter 37, verses 31 and 33. Jacob's deception by his sons using Joseph's cloak. Goodness gracious. And a slaughtered goat mirrors the way Jacob had deceived his own father by using Esau's cloak and 2 goat skins. Come on, somebody. What goes around, Jacob, comes around. What goes around, comes around. Boy, he can't get away from it. Man. This should let us know, right? And one thing I've heard biblical scholars talk about, especially when it comes to the Hebrew mind, right? This idea that history is cyclical, right? So where in our Western minds we see history as a like a linear a linear progression, right? Start one place and then just keep going, up and to the right. However, for the Hebrew mind, right, there's like you're thinking like starting at a point and then kind of making a circle. You keep coming, out here. If you're looking at the screen, you see my cursor. Start here in the circle and you just keep coming out, right? And then at times you keep running back into the same things over and over again, but slightly different, right? So where like history doesn't quite repeat itself, but it rhymes, right? And in the life of Joseph, man, we have come back around and around and around to that deception of his father. He can't get past it. It keeps coming to bite him in his tush, in his backside. Keep coming to bite him in his backside over and over again. Chapter 37, verse 34, put sackcloth on his loins. The common custom associated with mourning, right? So, um, so often, let's go up and see. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins. Let me see something real quick. Sackcloth. Okay, this is the first mention of it. Who? Somebody mourning ashes, maybe. Man, we have. I swear we read about somebody mourning. Who did we read before? No, man. I'm sorry, y'all. It's late. Goodness. I said I have to figure out a better schedule for my recording this because I record these videos very late, and sometimes my mind is gone. My mind is gone. So start remembering things that never actually happened, or thinking things, seeing things. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. Chapter 37, verse 35. I shall go down to Sheol. The report of Joseph's death causes Jacob to believe that his grief will continue through the afterlife. Sheol is the proper name for the place where people go after death. Though solid knowledge about the afterlife was lacking at this time, right? So they didn't quite know what happened after death, but they did have a concept of life after death. Chapter 37, verse 36. Potiphar was an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Potiphar Potiphar holds an important position in the royal court. The precise nature of his post is not known, apart from the fact that he had responsibility for the imprisonment of senior members of the king's staff. See note on chapter 40, verses 2 to 3. We'll get there tomorrow. This fact will become important later when Joseph is incarcerated in the king's prison. So Potiphar is in charge of imprisoning the king's staff. Okay. Very interesting. That was very interesting. All right, we'll see that tomorrow. Chapter 38 now, verses 1 to 30. Judah and Tamar. Readers, so Tamar, this is a different Tamar than what we looked at earlier today and yesterday. Tamar, David's daughter, way later in the history of events. So this is a different Tamar. Readers are likely to be shocked by the sexually oriented content of this chapter and its references to spilled semen and prostitution. Nevertheless, the unsavory account of Judah's relationship with Tamar, which interrupts the ongoing story of Joseph's time in Egypt, fulfills an important role in Genesis, for it focuses on the continuation of Judah's family line and concludes with a birth account in which a firstborn twin is pushed aside by his younger brother. In light of preceding episodes, these features highlight the potential importance of Judah's line through Perez, verse 29. Later in chapter 49, kingship is associated with Judah's descendants, and biblical history reveals that from Perez comes the Davidic dynasty. See Ruth chapter 4, verses 18 to 22. Although this chapter shows Judah at his worst, it also accounts for a remarkable transformation in his life, which comes through in the remaining episodes of the Joseph story. Further, Judah provides a stark contrast to the chaste Joseph in Genesis 39. Though he suffered for his chastity, Joseph's behavior is the right way to bring blessing to the Gentiles. All right, very interesting. It is interesting. So my daughter, she watches like these animated Bible stories. And so this evening before she went to sleep, she was like, "Daddy, can I watch some more of the Bible stories?" I said, "Yeah, I'm never gonna say no to that." And so, because really she's not supposed to be watching anything during the week, but she's watching Bible stories, you know. So, but these animated Bible stories, they do a very good job with with the animation and bringing out different things in the stories, and they really stay faithful to the text for the most part, you know. And so we're looking through trying to find one, and there was an animated version of the Judah and Tamar story, right? And I was like, "Oh man, have you heard of this story?" And then I started thinking about saying, maybe we shouldn't watch it. Maybe I should watch it first without you, because I don't know how they're going to do the story. So I'm like, man, this is a channel that's supposed to be, kind of geared towards kids. And they had this story in there. And I was like, man, how are they going to do the story? So I haven't watched it yet, but I'll report back, let you guys know how it went. So to see if my daughter can watch that or not. But yeah, we watched Elijah battling with the prophets of Baal instead. So. All right. Chapter 38, verses 1 and 2. A sense of foreboding is conveyed through Judah's separation from the rest of his family. His friendship with Hira, verse 1, a native of the Canaanite city Adullam, about 12 miles or 19 kilometers southwest of Bethlehem, and his marriage to an unnamed Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua, verse 2. In Genesis, marriages to Canaanites are never applauded. See chapter 24, verse 3. This is when Abraham has his servant go and find a wife for Isaac amongst his own relatives back in Haran, telling him that he cannot marry a Canaanite woman. Chapter 26, verses 34 to 35. This is, and then chapter 28, verse 1. This has to do with Esau marrying Canaanite women, and then Isaac saying that Joseph has to go back to Haran because he cannot marry a Canaanite woman. Right. So we're already starting off on a bad foot. I mean, we started off on a bad foot before when Judah suggested to sell Joseph into slavery, and now we just, I mean, boy, Judah stepping in it, man, stepping in it. We smell what you're stepping in, Judah. 38, chapter 38, verse 67. Judah is instrumental in arranging Er's marriage to Tamar, verse 6. The reference to Er's death is tantalizingly brief, verse 7. And the precise nature of his wickedness is not disclosed. No information on Tamar's background is provided, although it is likely that she was a Canaanite. Chapter 38, verse 8. Judah instructs his second son, Onan, to fulfill the custom of levirate marriage, which required a brother to marry his brother's childless widow and give her children. Brief details about this obligation are given in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 to 10. It plays an important role in the book of Ruth. And it says, see also Matthew chapter 22 and Luke chapter 20. We won't go there today. We will go to Deuteronomy 25, though, after we finish reading this note. Judah is eager that Tamar should have a son to continue the firstborn line of Since Genesis has a particular interest in the firstborn, this concern is noteworthy. The motif of firstborn also figures prominently in the birth account at the end of the chapter. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 to 10, just so we can orient ourselves to understand this levirate marriage deal. Turn. 25, verses 5 to 10. All right. Okay, so this is from the law of Moses, and it seems to be a common practice of that day. If brothers live together and one of them dies and has no son, then the wife of the one who died shall not be married outside the family to a strange man. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her to himself as wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And it will be that the firstborn whom she bears shall assume the name of his dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. But if the man does not desire to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up a name for his brother in Israel. He is not willing to perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his city shall summon him and speak to him. And if he stands and says, I do not desire to take her, then his brother's wife shall come to him in the sight of the elders and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face. You have no idea what the sandal situation is, but hey. And she shall answer and say, thus it is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And in Israel his name shall be called the house of a man whose sandal is removed. I think it's okay. I think I talked about this when there was a conversation about Abraham's servant putting his hand under his thigh. And I talked about how just, certain customs of that culture are just so different than ours. It's so different. In Israel, his name should be called the house of a man whose sandal is removed. I mean, goodness, what does that mean? What does that even mean, man? Oh, my goodness. Obviously, the verse tells us what it means, but I mean, man, what an insult. Man whose sandal is removed. Oh, man. Yeah, so, yeah. So Onan didn't remove his sandal, but he did remove something else. Okay. let's get back to it. We're reading the Bible here. We're reading the Bible here. I hope you guys can see after the past few days, like, man, when you get into the text, there's some interesting things going on, man. So you get into the text, man, you start to see all kinds of stuff. And it can be quite entertaining. It can be quite entertaining. All right, chapter 38, verse 9. Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. Oh wow, does it say that? All right, we'll look at the next page. While publicly, Onan appears to fulfill his father's request. In private, he refuses to father a child on behalf of Ur. All right, so let's. All right, here we go. Yeah, but Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. And then this is the first time I've seen this. As I was reading this to you guys, I almost stopped. I almost stopped because I've known the story, I've read the story a bunch of times, but I never paid attention to this phrase. So whenever he went in, this happened. This happened more than once. I thought this just happened one time, and then God struck him down. But no, Onan is like, well, hey, I'll fulfill my duty without fulfilling my duty, and I'll take advantage of the situation. Man, trifling, boy, trifling. Goodness gracious. The apple not falling far from the tree. Man. Yeah. At least the way it's reading in ESV. So whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would like an ongoing thing, man. Goodness. That's crazy. That is crazy. He would waste the semen on the ground. Onan engaged in coitus interruptus, not self-gratification. Coitus interruptus? What? Hold on a second. I have never seen coitus. How do you spell it? Coitus interruptus. Also known as the withdrawal or pullout method. Where is it? Is this this is Latin, isn't it? Coitus. Interrupted. Is that Latin? Term. That's crazy. I've never heard of this. All right. Coitus interruptus. All right. Basically, Onan's pullout game was strong. All right. So Onan engaged in coitus. All right. I don't know if you guys ever watched the show. What's that show called? Big Bang. Is it Big Bang or Big Bang Theory? Right. And the nerds on the show would always talk about coitus, right? Are you guys gonna do coitus? And I had never looked it up. Like I was like, oh, I don't know why they're calling it coitus. Um, but they were, speaking Latin. So it turns out. But Onan was engaged in coitus interruptus, not self-gratification. He's pulling out, right? Not self-gratification, as some early rabbis mistakenly thought. A detailed explanation for his action is not given, but selfishness is the most likely explanation. He probably feared that a son born to Tamar would be privileged over all other sons born to him, reducing the importance of his own family line and reducing his share of Judah's inheritance. Although the circumstances are different, Ruth chapter 4, verses 5 to 6 provides another example of a man refusing to undertake the duty of levirate marriage. We'll see that. We'll see that as we get there. Later on this year. All right, chapter 38, verse 10. I guess we'll say another thing about this. So sometimes people would speak about masturbation as a sin because of this episode here in the Bible, right? Where this episode doesn't necessarily speak to that, right? Because the issue here is not, self-gratification, as the ESV Study Bible note says. The issue here is his, I would say two things, especially what it seems like, because there was continual intercourse going on, right? At least the way that it reads in the ESV. The way it reads in the ESV is there's continuous intercourse going on. Where is verse 9? Let's just see how it reads in other Genesis 38, 9. So when he went in, the Amplified is whenever he went in. The CSB, whenever he slept. Let's see what else we got. Obviously, we saw the ESV says Roman Christian Standard, whenever he slept. KJV is when he went in. So that makes it sound like once. And it happened that when he went in, he wasted it. So LSB has it sound like it's once. What did NLE say? NASB, when he had relations, he wasted. NIV, whenever he slept, he spilled the semen. So a few different a few different English versions are rendering it as if this was an ongoing thing. This wasn't just a one-time deal, right? I mean, it's bad enough if it was a one-time deal, but the ongoing nature of it, goodness gracious, right? He's, taking advantage of Tamar over and over again, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna get my rocks off, but I'm not gonna do what I'm supposed to do, man. And so that, yeah, I would say at least the way that it's reading in ASV, right? Especially if it's an ongoing thing. There's the taking advantage of the woman over and over again, right? And intentionally not doing a thing that would is what he's responsible to do, right? to provide for her a son, right? And really to take care of her. Well, we've talked about this, a bunch of times now, right? Where within Genesis and throughout the wider Bible, right? This idea of authority, uh, uh, positions of authority, um, are there to for the person in authority to have responsibility and care for those under his authority, right? And so, and then we see like the distortions when that does not happen, right? And so here, not necessarily that Onan is necessarily given authority over her, right? However, though, he is given access to her body, right? But it's access to her body with the purposes of for her care, right? Hey, she does not have a husband; she's a widow now, right? Um, and so in that culture, right, she has no husband, no son. If her father's dies, hey, she's out of luck. So, this whole deal is about her care, and he's just taking advantage of her over and over again, not upholding his end of the bargain. And God finds that wicked, and so he kills him. Chapter 38, verse 10: Onus hypocritical behavior causes God to punish him by death. Exactly, very much so. Amen. Hallelujah. Chapter 38, verse 11. Following the deaths of his two eldest sons, Judah protects his remaining son, Shelah, by sending Tamar back to her own family under the pretext that one day she will marry Shelah. He treats Tamar as if she were dangerous, while it was actually the evil of the two sons that brought about their deaths. Exactly. I mean, the ridiculous, immoral nature of Judah as he suggests his brothers selling into slavery so they could profit, right? Not only can they profit, hey, our hands are clean, right? Not to take responsibility for his actions. And then he goes off and, as we've seen throughout the story, right? Hey, one of the things that you can't do is marry a Canaanite woman. He does. Leaves his brothers behind, becomes best buds with the Canaanite, right? And then we start to see wickedness from his children. It's like, hey, man, taking no responsibility at all, right, for his actions and what he's done. And now he's putting the blame on Tamar. What has she done? Nothing. So we have that. All right. Chapter 38, verse 12. Sometime later, Judah becomes a widower. After a period of mourning, he travels to Timnah. Two locations are known by this name, but this one is probably located in the southern hill country of Judah. See Joshua chapter 15, verse 47. We'll look at it when we get there later on this year. We won't look at it this evening, but yeah, Lord willing, we'll remember what happened at Timnah, right? Or maybe they'll make a note about it that we can remember it when we get to that part of Joshua. All right, chapter 38, verses 13 to 14. Having waited in vain for Judah to fulfill his promise regarding Shelah, verse 11, Tamar decides to take action. This is, oh man. All right, let's get through it, and then I'll discuss something from it. She puts off her widow's garments and covers herself with a veil, possibly intending at first to remind Judah that she is betrothed to Shelah. See note on chapter 24, verse 65. That is when Rebekah put on a veil in front of Isaac, when the servant, was bringing her back to Canaan, to Mamre. And so here, what the ESV biblical scholars are associating her with putting the veil on is she's putting it on a veil of one expecting to be a wife, right? But Judah is so messed up in his head, not being able to see straight, that he assumes she's a prostitute. This guy. She then goes to the entrance at Naim in the hope of meeting her father-in-law. The location of Naim, whose name means two springs or eyes, is unknown. It probably ought to be distinguished from Enam, mentioned in Joshua chapter 15, verse 34. Given Tamar's veil and Judah's inability to recognize her, it is ironic that these events should take place at a location known as eyes. Yes, ironic and probably intentional, right? She has eyes to see him and to see the situation clearly. His eyes, for whatever reason, are unable to see her and to see the situation clearly. Right? So it is fitting that they are there at a place called eyes. Because even though her face is veiled, she can see. And even though his face is not veiled, he can't. Chapter 38, verse 15. When Judah sees Tamar, he assumes that she is a prostitute, for she had covered her face. Like, that's the only reason that a woman would cover her face. Okay. Thus, effectively achieved. Well, I can see I'm getting hot. I'm getting hot here. Getting hot here. Goodness. All right. I'm feeling bad for Tamar, man. She got to make things happen. Okay. Thus, effectively achieving anonymity. Since betrothed women wore veils, Judah's belief that Tamar is a prostitute would not have been simply based on her covered face. Her lone presence by the roadside possibly contributed to this assumption. Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 2 links waysides with prostitution. Okay. So, so is basically what they're suggesting here is, hey, maybe Tamar knew what she was doing, right? She at first intended to show up with a veil, like the veil of a bride, right? But by standing where she stood, now she wore the veil of a prostitute, right? Or made herself seem that way in order to bring forth the coming events. Right. Could be. There's something we'll talk about at the end of this that I don't think I don't think they discussed here. So if not, we'll talk about it. All right, chapter 38, verses 16 to 18. Judah's request for sexual intercourse reinforces the reader's perception of him as a man driven by personal gratification. Exactly. Having knowingly deceived Tamar by sending her away, he takes advantage of her for his own pleasure. Like son, like father. Tamar's request. What will you give me? Verse 16. Plays on Judah's refusal to give her Shelah. Judah's offer of a young goat, verse 17, results in Tamar's taking from Judah his signet, cord, and staff in pledge. Verse 18. From experience, she knows that he is not a man to be trusted. The signet may have been a small cylinder seal that was worn on a cord around the neck. The seal was rolled over soft clay to give a unique impression, identifying the owner. The seal was often perforated for suspension by the cord. Chapter 38, verse 19. Tamar returns home and resumes her status as a widow. Chapter 38, verse 21. Hira searches for Tamar in vain. Ironically, Hira's description of Tamar as a cult prostitute introduces into the account a religious dimension linked to fertility rituals. The term used by Hira, Hebrew kadashah, is rarely used in the Old Testament. See Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 17, and Hosea chapter 4, verse 14. Possibly because it resembles Hebrew words associated with holiness. All right, let's see. Deuteronomy 23, 17. Twenty-three, 17. Sorry about that here. I'm trying to look at these verses, and I misspelled stuff. 23, 17, and Hosea 4, 14. Misspelled things, put numbers in the wrong places. Messed us all the way up, man. Messed us all the way up. But we're getting there. Internet's acting a little slow. Bible Gateway's not working. All right. Maybe that's the Lord telling me to move on. Deuteronomy 17. Let's see. All right, it's not working. We're not gonna go to it. Maybe I can do the old-fashioned way. I can just read it to you guys instead of showing it to you on the screen. I can read it to you from my copy here. You know, when you're so used to pulling things up on online, the turning of pages. Goodness, having to find stuff. The turning of pages, man. It can be a little laborious. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 17. None of the daughters of Israel shall be a cult prostitute, and none of the sons of Israel shall be a cult prostitute. All right. So that's from the Mosaic Law in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 17. We won't go to Hosea chapter 4, verse 14. We'll head to the next note. Chapter 38, verses 24 to 26. The report of Tamar's immorality produces an outburst of righteous indignation that prompts Judah to demand that she should be burned to death. Verse 24. I mean, goodness gracious. This guy finally got a moral backbone. I can't stand for this. Her being immoral, I can't stand for it. She should be burned to death. When Judah discovers that he was responsible for Tamar's pregnancy, he acknowledges her righteousness in contrast to his own failure. Verse 26. Correct. This marks an important turning point for Judah. Chapter 38, verses 27 to 30. Knowing that Tamar has twins, the midwife ties a scarlet thread, verse 28, on the hand of Zerah, so that she can identify him as the firstborn. the one who came out first. But before Zerah is fully born, his twin brother breaks out in front of him. Consequently, the light of the midwife's observation, well, in the light of the midwife's observation, he is called Perez, which means breach. Okay, what is this? Okay, we'll do that later. Oh, sorry about that. All right. Viewed in the light of Genesis as a whole, the unusual nature of this brief birth account, especially with its focus on the identity of the firstborn, suggests that something significant will develop in the line of Perez. Correct. And I would say, let's remember as we go on, let's remember that red cord. Okay. So remember the red cord. It is tied around the arm of the brother, Zerah. Okay. Later on, this is foreshadow. Later on, in the year, probably around, let's see when we're going to get there. Probably around March time frame. We'll get there. So let's remember, right? It's January now, middle of January. Sometime within first week or so of March, we'll see the red cord again. Okay. I want us to remember the story. All right. Okay. Before we get into chapter 39, one thing that I want to discuss, right? And which is, well, okay. Which is why it is so crucial to understand the literary moves within the Bible, okay? And to try to understand the stories as well as we possibly can. And to really try to think about the stories as well as we possibly can. And not just look at the Bible as a book of moral codes, okay? Because within the stories, sometimes, as we've seen before, there is sometimes moral ambiguity where we don't know what is right. And then other times, right, where there's some things, especially things that might challenge our culture, that we would think seems right, that the Bible clearly says is wrong. Or other times where there might be a thing that might be right depending on which direction that it's going in. Right? So we've talked about things that by themselves are neither good nor bad. It could be good depending on the purpose, could be bad depending on the purpose, right? So we've talked about humans coming together in unity, right? Well, yeah, humans coming together in unity, but coming together in unity to do what, right? We've seen the Tower of Babel and other times where we've seen the "come let us" language done by humans. Okay, coming together in unity. They've come together in unity to do bad things, right? And their unit and their coming together magnified the bad thing that they were doing. So that was wrong, right? The coming together by itself was not wrong, but the coming together to do the bad thing, wrong. Coming together to do things for God's purposes, correct, right? We've seen before the listening to the voice of someone's wife, right? So the first two times we see it, Adam listens to the voice of his wife Eve. Abram listens to the voice of his wife Sarai, or Abraham listens to the voice of his wife Sarah. And both of those times, things go wrong, not because they listen to the voice of their wife, but because the thing that their wife was saying was not aligned with what God was either saying or doing. However, later on, God tells Abraham to listen to the voice of his wife. Why? Because because what she was saying aligned with what God was eventually doing. So the listening to the wife's voice, neither is presented as a good or bad thing, but only it is good or bad only compared to with what direction it is going in. Okay, we saw, I think it was either yesterday or the day before. I think maybe the day before when Laban was doing the divination. Right, there are some things, no matter which direction it's going in, that we just should not do. Right, and divination is one of those. Right, so no matter what the intention is, it is always bad. Right, so there's some things that are bad depending on the aim of where it's going. Other things that are bad just to be bad, right? And there are other categories that are just kind of morally ambiguous. It depends on a lot of different things to try to figure out whether it's good or bad. Okay, now in this situation with Tamar, right? Sometimes biblical scholars talk about something that appears to be within Scripture, right? This concept of righteous deception. Okay, concept of righteous deception. We have seen deception happen throughout the book of Genesis so far. Chapter 3, the serpent deceives Eve, right? We've seen, especially with Jacob, he and Rebekah conspire to deceive Isaac. Laban deceives him. His sons deceive him, right? And maybe there could be a case for Rachel and Jacob deceiving Isaac, righteous deception, right? But we really wouldn't put that into that category, because it seems that a part of the requirements for this idea of righteous deception to come in place is where life is in danger. Okay, so sometimes some people put, when discussing righteous deception, sometimes they put Abraham in that category, right? When he lied about Sarah as he went to Egypt, and then when he went to the land where Abimelech was. And the reason they say that is that, because Abraham had all these different people with him, even though the text says that, it would care for his life, but because he was responsible for so many people, right, he was righteously deceiving, because if he goes, what happens to all the people? I don't know, it could be a stretch, right? However, this story, though, with Tamar, right, definitely fits the idea of righteous deception. Okay, so here it's again, we're thinking about the culture that she's in, right? It's not like she can get much work by herself, right? Where she can go and to law school, right? Or go be a nurse, or so very limited opportunities to take care of herself within this culture, right? And so she is dependent upon either her father, her husband, or a son. She's much dependent upon that, right? And because of that, right, she has been faithful, and hey, it wasn't because of her wickedness that something happened to her. It wasn't because of her wickedness that Onan didn't uphold his end, right? And we don't hear anything bad from her throughout this entire story. And she comes and like, hey, look, I was promised Sheila. She comes back for him, in her wedding veil. And Judah's like, nah, we're not doing that, right? And so she righteously deceives him in order to take care of herself. Later on, in the book of Exodus, which we'll see here, I think in about a week, or maybe 10 days or so from now, we'll get there, right? We see righteous deception happen as well, where some of the midwives end up lying to Pharaoh about some of the babies being born, right? Because they're not supposed to allow the boys to come out. I think they're supposed to kill the boys or something like that. Yeah, I think they're supposed to kill the boys, or not allow the boys to be born, or something where the boys aren't supposed to live. And they deceive Pharaoh and say, "Hey, look, we can't do it. The baby's already born by the time we get there. Sorry, can't help you out." Right? But they are righteously deceiving him. Right? So, why did I bring that up? At times, I think as far as Christian living goes, I think because of our limited understanding of Scripture and our limited biblical literacy, and our going off of small pieces, trying to piece things together, right? I think we don't know how to navigate many situations because of our lack of understanding of the correct moral choice, right? And here with Tamar, and definitely with the midwives in Exodus, they both did things that we would say, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! Hey, we know that that was deceptive. You didn't tell the truth." However, we look at it and say, "Well, you kind of did the right thing, though, right?" And um, and so I would say there are times in our Christian walk where, there is a hard to understand. Hey, which way should I go? Should I go right or should I go left? Right? Should I, do this thing or do that thing? Right? How much leeway do I have to do something that that might seem, either a bit sketchy or that might seem a bit harsh? And this is where prudence comes in, and godly wisdom comes in. But mostly we get those things from Scripture. All right, hopefully our gateway is working again. Let's see. Help me, Lord. Please help me, Lord. Help me, Lord. Please, please, please help me. I want to try to go to. Oh, it's not working. All right, let's see. All right. Okay. Hebrews chapter 5 verses. Let's go 10 to 14, I think. Okay. All right. So in the book of Hebrews, the writer, it's really 12 to 14 is what we're looking for. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you have need again for someone to teach you the elementary principles of the oracles of God. You have come to need milk, not solid food. Okay. So, hey, you've been a Christian for a long time. Okay. And by this time, you should be very mature in all things, but you're not. So we need to go back to the origin of things, get you the basic principles of the oracles of God, basic principles of, what God's word is, basic principles of the gospel, all that, right? Why? For everyone who partakes only of milk is not accustomed to the word of righteousness, for he is an infant, right? The word of righteousness. So if you're only getting the milk, if you're only getting the basics, right? You're not a cut. You just you got your foot in the door, but you're not accustomed to the word of righteousness, right? But solid food is for the mature, right? Hey, once you become accustomed with the word of righteousness, now we get you to solid food because of practice, have their senses trained to discern good and evil, right? So by the chewing on the solid food of the word, going beyond first principles, being accustomed to the word of righteousness, right? That makes one mature, right? And able to develop the practices to make their senses trained in being able to discern good and evil, right? So we were going through this, and I talked about before, we wanted to do this to speak about things going on in our world and where I see deception. However, I could talk about the deception, right? And I can continuously make references to scripture, but I think the reason why we are in the situation that we're in is because a lot of people don't know the scriptures. Our level of biblical literacy is awful in America. Awful. And so because of that, we're doing this whole thing to try to help us train ourselves to be able to discern good and evil, right? And also being able to train ourselves to know, hey, when we look at Tamar and her situation, did she act righteously or not? Now we get a hint within the text because it tells us, she's more righteous than Judas says, oh, she's more righteous than I, right? But within the text, that word is used for her. And I think Abraham is the only other person that's useful within the book of Genesis. Right? Maybe Noah, right? So Noah, Abraham, and Tamar. If Bible Gateway was working, maybe we can go see. Let's see. All right, it's working right here. Let's see. All right. Noah, Abraham believed God, was counting him as righteousness. God talks about doing righteous, right? So it's still Abraham. All right. Abimelech calls him his nation righteous. And then Joseph's talks about his righteousness, right? But she is referred to as righteous. Okay. So that's the LSB. But LSB has that. Let's see about the ESV, since that's what we're in. Yeah, the ESV has her, Abraham, and Noah. Her, Abraham, and Noah in the ESV. So, that's what we got. So, yeah. So we have to be trained here in the scriptures to be able to discern good and evil, and slowing down, paying attention to what's happening in these stories, and seeing how there are clues within the text to let us know if someone has done good or evil, right? Even for the biblical scholars with the PhDs and all that, who this is all they do. They look at the original languages, stuff like that, right? They look at Abraham. Some of them look at Abraham and said, "Oh, he was being righteously deceptive." I don't know. I mean, the text kind of suggests that he, the surrounding story suggests that no, he was not. That God, despite his uh, despite his deception and what appears to be his lack of faith, God still moves in line with his purposes. Right? It happens with Pharaoh and Abimelech, and then with Isaac and Abimelech. Right? But here, there is clear at the end of the story, right? Everybody around Tamar seems to be, where the story is saying, hey, this guy's wrong, this guy's wrong, this guy's wrong, this guy's wrong, Tamar. Right? And then at the end of the story, you get a declaration of she is more righteous than I. Right? She gets associated with righteousness. All right. All right, let's get back to the notes. Chapter 39. Chapter 39, verses 1 to 23. Joseph in Egypt. The Lord's presence with Joseph in Egypt enables him to find favor with first Potiphar and then the keeper of the prison. While Joseph's refusal to lie with Potiphar's wife results in his being wrongly imprisoned, his personal integrity is not compromised. Implicit in this account is the idea that God's presence with Joseph is linked to Joseph's commitment to the Lord. Chapter 39, verse 1. This verse, which echoes chapter 37, verse 36, reintroduces Joseph as the main character of the story. He continues as such till the book ends. Let me see. Genesis 37, 36. All right, so at the end of 37, we're told the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. And then to begin chapter 39, now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. Right? So we get a little connection after we took our pause in chapter 38 to go to the story of Judah and Tamar. All right. Okay. Chapter 39, verses 2 to 5. The Lord was with Joseph. Right at the outset, God's presence with Joseph is unambiguously affirmed. Although God never speaks directly to him as he did to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph's life in Egypt is governed by God's providential care. See chapter 50, verse 20. We'll wait till we get there to actually see that. Okay. He became a successful man. In spite of having been sold into slavery, Joseph prospers, being promoted to the position of overseer of Potiphar's house. The repeated references to the Lord in these verses emphasizes that Joseph's success is due to God's presence with him, by indicating that the divine blessing comes through Joseph. The narrator picks up on one of the important elements of the promises made to the patriarchs. All right. See, for example, chapter 12, verse 3, chapter 18, verse 18, chapter 22, verse 17, and chapter 30, verse 27. These are the promises that God made to Abraham in chapter 12, 18, and 22, and then to Jacob in chapter 30. All right. Chapter 39, verses 6 to 9. Handsome in form and appearance. Let's see. Let's move this over here. This echoes chapter 29, verse 17, describing Joseph's mother, Rachel. This brief observation explains why Potiphar's wife, chapter 39, verse 7, is drawn to him. Right? Remember, Jacob was drawn to Rachel, willing to work for her for 7 years because she was beautiful in form and appearance. Right? And Joseph is handsome in form and appearance. Joseph's refusal to lie, i.e. sexually, verses 7 to 8, with her contrasts sharply with the behavior of Reuben and Judah. Chapter 35, verse 22, and chapter 38, verses 15 to 18. Correct. All right, we see Reuben unable to control himself. Judah unable to control himself. His integrity does not permit him to betray his master by committing adultery, sin against God. Joseph rightly recognizes that to give in to Potiphar's wife not only would be an offense against his master, who has trusted him with everything he owns, but equally be an offense against God. And I wouldn't actually use the term equally. I would say more so an offense against God. Cross-reference Psalm chapter 51, verse 4a. And we'll head there for those who don't know the Psalm 51. Right? So, in the Psalms, we have these things, I think they call them postscripts. But basically, it's kind of like titles to the Psalms that I think most biblical scholars believe that these are added by scribes as the Psalms were passed along. And so, and every Bible that you have, for the most part, they'll have these. But the postscript says, to the choir master, a Psalm of David, when Nathan the prophet went to him after he had gone into Bathsheba, right? So David, after he commits adultery, this is what he prays, right? After he commits adultery and is found out, this is what he prays. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. Against you and you only? David slept with another man's wife. Against God and God only? Not only that, David covered it up by getting the man killed. Against you and you only? Yes. Against God and God primarily. as he sinned. All of our sin, primarily, though it is a sin against other people, it can be, but it is always and primarily a sin against a holy God. I don't know if I have, given off enough of the sense, but my patience, if it were up to me, if I could be God for a day, we all be wiped out. I wouldn't give a second thought to it. Nope, not doing it. All right. But God continues to suffer us, continues to suffer with us, though we continue to sin against him. All right. So primarily, every time we sin, primarily, it is against the holy God, creator of the entire universe, who gives you every breath. And we are continuously sinning against him. Why he puts up with us, I have no idea. I have no idea. He's working on me, though. He's working on me. He's working on me to, see people as he does. But folks, lucky I am, he does not hand me the reins for the day. Because if so, we all wiped out. You're all wiped out. All right. Joseph exercises authority without seeing this as an opportunity to betray or exploit others. Hello. The motif of the spurned seductress appears elsewhere in ancient Near Eastern literature. In Egypt, the story called the Tale of Two Brothers tells of two brothers, one of whom spurns the advances of the other's wife. Okay, but this note here, Joseph exercises authority without seeing this as an opportunity to betray or exploit others. He is standing in as the model of, hey, again, we keep seeing this idea within Genesis that what authority is for is for the responsibility and care of those who are underneath the authority. It is not there for exploitation or oppression. We continuously see it misused, but Joseph must be highlighted here that he is using his rightly and is not trying to take advantage of, of his success, not trying to take advantage of the authority that he's been given. Right? Trying to remain faithful. So, and we talked about, I think either on day prep day one or prep day two or day one, we talked about how Bible not just a book of law codes, right? But sometimes some stories are told to tell us what not to do, and but this would be one of those stories that is told to tell us what to do. Okay. And we know that by the context and how it is told. Hey, this is a model of what to do. This is a model of how you utilize authority. And guess what? It might backfire, but you still got to do the right thing. Chapter 39, verses 10 to 12. He would not listen to her. Come on now. I told y'all to look out for this. Right? Listening. Who are you listening to? Whose voice are you listening to? Right? Joseph has a relationship with God where he is encountering God in his dreams. Right? We see that he's having much success because of his relationship with God. Right? And so there's an inference that he is listening to the voice of the Lord, not listening to the voice of the woman who is speaking contrary to the Lord. I mean, her being a woman is incidental. So listen to any voice that is contrary to the Lord. He would not listen to her. Right? So this is the first time we see the not listen. We've seen before people listening to the voice that is speaking against what God either has said or is doing. And this is the first time we get the rejection of the voice against God, right? Joseph consistently rejects the advances of Potiphar's wife. But one day, in the course of doing his normal work, Potiphar's wife catches Joseph by his garment. Unable to free himself, Joseph flees, leaving his garment in her hand. As in chapter 37, verse 31 to 33, Joseph's garment plays an important role in the story, and as before, is used to deceive other people. Boy, this is deception everywhere. Right? This is just Tales of Deception, episode 25. Oh, man. Chapter 39, verses 13 to 15. All right. Well, actually, before we get there, I mean, yeah, and see how they're tying the stories together, too. All right. So you get Joseph's garment, playing roles in both parts, right? I hope by the time that we've gotten here, as you guys are listening to me read the story at first, that you were able to pick up on it, right? Oh man, hey, his garment is used here for deception. His garment is used there for deception, right? And so, and at some point, we'll talk about the idea of a chiasm, because I think that starts to build a chiasm, probably around the Tamar story. Maybe not, but we have similar type events at the end. That means it's pointing to something in between. But we'll discuss that another time. I'm confident it'll come up. But we'll discuss it then at some other time. If not, I'll bring it up. Yeah. So you have those little things to help to carry the story forward. All right, chapter 39, verses 13 to 15. While Potiphar is still absent, his wife convinces the men of her household to side with her. He has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. She combines three elements in order to maximize her case against Joseph. Number one, she places some of the blame on her husband, for he was responsible for Joseph's presence in the household. Number two, by emphasizing Joseph's non-Egyptian origin, she exploits a long-standing racial tension that existed between native Egyptians and foreigners from Canaan. And number three, she portrays Joseph's action as being directed against the entire household and not simply her. Laugh recalls chapter 21, verse 9, and chapter 26, verse 8, where it has the connotations of making fun of someone and caressing, respectively. 21 verse 9 was Ishmael mocking or laughing at Isaac. 26 verse 8. I forgot what that was. Genesis 26, 8. Oh, okay. When Abimelech saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah. Concerning the term Hebrew, see note on chapter 10, verses 21 to 32. That's where we saw the name Eber, where Hebrew comes from. So this is the descendants of Eber. Chapter 39, verses 16 to 19. With Joseph's garment as evidence, verse 16, Potiphar's wife tells to her husband with significant variations what she has already told the men of her household. Once again, she focuses on the non-Egyptian background of Joseph, her husband's poor judgment in bringing him into the household, and Joseph's exploitation of her. Laugh at me, verse 17. Contrast, verse 14. What does she say in verse 14? To laugh at us, verse 14. Came in to laugh at me, right? So she gets the guys on the other men in her house to be on her side by saying that he's there to make fun of all of us, right? But then to get her husband's sympathy to laugh at me. To place, they had it there. Where she's supposed to laugh at. All right. To place further pressure on her husband, she describes Joseph as your servant. Right? Look what you've done. Right? And this kind of echoes a little bit back when Sarah was Sarai. She got mad at Abraham for the situation with Hagar and her son Isaac. And she, is putting the blame on Abram, even though it was her idea at the time, right? And here we go with Potiphar's wife blaming her husband for her actions. All right. Chapter 39, verses 20 to 23. The swiftness with which the narrator reports the imprisonment of Joseph mirrors what happened in reality. As a slave, Joseph had no legal rights. While the reader is not immediately conscious of the significance of Joseph's imprisonment, where the king's prisoners were confined, verse 20, this will prove significant for future developments. The law codes of the ancient Near East, including Old Testament legislation, do not employ punishment by imprisonment in jail. Yet the practice is well known and attested in ancient Egyptian literature. Therefore, this story fits well with the culture of ancient Egypt. By echoing much of the language of verses 2 to 5, these verses imply that Joseph's experience in prison paralleled his earlier experience in Potiphar's house, because the Lord's presence was with him. Because of the Lord's presence with him, Joseph prospers. Verse 23. Okay. I think. Yeah. All right. So that's it for right now. With verse 37 and 39. I think we did some great work here tonight. Tomorrow we get into some more stuff with Joseph. So yeah, I hope that this is helping you guys to, see certain elements within the story, helping you guys to, either as you're reading it on your own or as you're listening to me read the scripture section at the beginning of the videos, that you guys are catching up on some things as I'm reading, and you're hearing certain words and certain phrases, certain languages, or seeing certain pictures that are developing. And you're starting to make connections like, oh man, hey, this is kind of like that, this is kind of like that. Oh man, I should be expecting this, or I should be expecting that. So good stuff here. All right, let's get to the verses on the history of salvation. And so we did chapter 37 to chapter 39. So we have here 4 verses to look at, and then we'll be done for that. Chapter 37, verse 7. Prophetic dreams concerning God's plan for the offspring of promise foreshadow the final prophetic unveiling of God's purposes through Christ. Chapter 37, verse 20. Joseph who is to be the key deliverer of God's people, has a scrape with death and is finally glorified. Chapter 41, verse 41, foreshadowing the suffering and glorification of Christ, the final deliverer. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Yeah, we kind of see this within his story as we will go along. He gets low, goes lower, goes lower, goes lower, and then finally exalted. Chapter 38, verse 29. In spite of unrighteous sexual behavior by several males, God brings about his own purpose of continuing the offspring leading to Christ. Matthew chapter 1, verse 3. Chapter 39, verse 9. Joseph, in contrast to Adam and Eve, firmly rejected temptation, anticipating Christ's rejection of temptation. Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 to 11, and chapter 16, verse 23. Also, Luke chapter 4. Yes. Yeah, saw that. He does not listen to the voice that is speaking against what God has said or is doing. All right. This has been wonderful. I pray that this helps you, that this encourages you, that this helps with your discernment, and helps you to know that even in situations like with Tamar's, that the Lord would still provide, even as other people around her were acting unjust towards her, that he opened the door that she would be provided for, not only provided for, but that from her womb would come a progenitor of the Savior of the world. I think I'm using that word right. An ancestor, the Savior of the world. That she would eventually be included in his genealogy herself. So, pray this bless you. Pray this in the name of Christ. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.